young people actually being in debt because, they see fast money first.
The basic principle is this: if you don't have money, don't buy.
The government takes this bullying issue very seriously.
Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Beyond the Headlines, the go-to space for the top stories that made the headlines and more. I'm Amalina Kamal, and today we have two pressing issues to discuss, both about systemic vulnerability. One on social, the other one on finances. Now, it's both different, but what we'll be looking at firstly is the anti-bully bill that was recently passed in Parliament, Malaysia's effort to move from a reactive to a preventive system when it comes to child and youth bullying. Then, in our second segment, we pivot to rising personal bankruptcies that's happening within our country, an alarming sign of growing household strain and structural vulnerability in our economy. For this, we're joined in the studio by Associate Professor Dr. Ida Muhammad Yasin from Putra Business School. Welcome, Dr. Ida, to Beyond Headlines.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
I'm glad that you're here. But Doctor, before I get to you, I just want to talk with our audience, or at least expand the discussion on the anti-bully bill first. Now, bullying and the Malaysian government's efforts to tackle it through these particular new implementations under the anti-bully bill. What we know is that the law is designed to move Malaysia from a largely reactive system, as I mentioned, where schools and authorities intervene only after incidents occur, to a more preventive framework where it's aimed at detecting the issues and address bullying earlier on. Now, many questions still remain. Are schools actually equipped to spot psychological, cyber, or even non-visible forms of bullying? And whether or not the tribunal that exists within this framework can adequately protect victims, or could it unintentionally actually favour perpetrators who have stronger institutional and family backing? We spoke to Criminologist Dr. Haezreena Begum on this, where she shed light on the challenges of early detection, institutional resistance, as well as the broader social culture that allows bullying to persist. Dr. Haezreena, thank you so much for joining in on this particular call. Now, of course, I want you to maybe start off by explaining to us how the Anti-Bullying Act actually ensures accountability for both the bully and their parents or guardians, and how is it different from the previous laws or whatever existing laws that we have today?
There is this kind of a restorative justice approach where I think there will be requirement to apologize to the victim. I think there's also the requirement where the parents or the guardian is to pay some monetary compensation. So meaning that there is accountability. The perpetrator or the person who commits who bullies someone will need to be held accountable. So before this, there's basically no law. There's only those vague laws, Section 507, 509. And after that, you had that 507 A until G, until G and all that. But to me, those are just piecemeal laws, okay, included in the penal code. Because like I said, that there is no particular specific law on bullying which defines what is bullying. So this Anti-Bully Act seems more comprehensive because it defines what bullying is. It also includes cyberbullying.
Given that bullying is often underreported, we all know that, but do you think that this particular new act will actually encourage more people to come forward? Or could it actually instill fear because they're afraid of retaliation?
Well, this act is yet to be tested, but we are hopeful, we are optimistic that this will actually address a lot of bullying issues. Number of bullying, even the data that we see are just data that's reported. So you just imagine the underreporting, those that has not been reported. As to whether it can deter bullying or act as a as a catalyst for people to report. Let's say I said this is to be tested. The only thing is that the good thing is that because now we actually have a structure, so meaning to show that the government takes this bullying issue very seriously. Society does not tolerate bullying. We were showing that because at the moment there's a lot of normalization of bullying. So by having that, you actually show that the public is actually, responding and becoming non-tolerant of such. That means we're moving away from normalization of bullying into this. So let's see how it goes. In parts of people fearing to report for fear of retaliation, I think that might still happen. That's why I said we have to see how this pans out. Because even anonymity, for example, this person reports anonymously, and then this perpetrator, the doer, the bully is being caught. If this person bullies many people, they may be guessing, or that person or the group may be guessing who might have reported them. But if it's just one person, it's not hard to guess who.
But Doctor, there is this current consideration of, how realistic is it to actually expect schools to report bullying honestly? Because there's a question of reputational damage, right? I mean, given what had transpired the past year with a particular case, we know that certain cases are solved internally within the school itself, and what people wanted was more transparency, right? Do you think the tribunal should have powers to actually audit schools or investigate systemic cover-ups, potential systemic cover-ups, if any?
Firstly, members of the tribunal, they have to be independent. And then there must be auditing, definitely. Because I think from this act, there are I believe there are 3 main scenarios where the authority can intervene. When one of it, I think if the tribunal will take over the case, if the complainant has made a complaint to the internal committee but alleges that no action was taken or the complaint was not properly handled by the committee. To me, this is a very, very important clause, provision, which means that the aggrieved party, that means whoever who feel being bullied, if they're not happy with the decision given by the school or the internal committee, they can still refer that to the tribunal. Nevertheless, of course, there must be auditing, data keeping, and everything must be there. And then there's also this very good as well, this provision on how the tribunal will have jurisdictions if the bullying involves a child victim who experienced that bullying outside of school or outside of the regulations. That is also very important because children sometimes they meet outside. So the bullying may not occur in school grounds or certain programs, but when they met, suddenly they meet in a mall, shopping mall, or somewhere. So it covers that as well. So to me, all this is really good. And also I think the third one is on the non-institutionalized child victims. This is really good because it also covers those who are not in school, not going to school. And also, I think apart from this, I think it also encompasses perpetrators who are not children, because here there may be, if there is a group, and in that group there will be adults, or maybe it's just an adult, so it covers that as well.
Doctor, we do understand that because research also shows that chronic bullies often escalate to violence and then later on gang affiliation, or if not to that extent, abuse in adulthood. So how important is it for us to actually introduce or also instill mechanisms that look at counseling and psychosocial support as one of the factors to curb the cycle of bullying?
I always say this, not just to the victim, but also the bully, because we do not know what the bully is going through. And if there's so many reasons, studies on why there's a person bully, not necessarily because the bully itself it has problems or there's reasons for it, sometimes they're just doing it for fun. They find it humorous, and to me that is also problematic, because if you find oppressing someone as humorous, it means there's something wrong, or you do not find your bullying act as something oppressive, that is problematic. So I think there need to be a lot of besides having this deterrent, retributive so-called effect. We need to see a lot. We need to handle this in a very holistic manner. I always stress on this. We have to look at this in a very delicate way, because while we know that these children will now be in conflict with law, especially the bullies, that does not absolve the fact that they are children. So because we don't want this tribunal to act as a trauma, to traumatize. And when I say traumatize, it's not just the bully, even the victims, because we don't want them to find this process exhausting, humiliating. So they will need to make devise grounds to make it as child-friendly as possible. So that, it will encourage people to come and report. This is, to me, is very important, because like I said, a lot of cases go unreported because they do not like to go through the whole process. They find the process humiliating, exhausting, stigmatizing, isolating, and they themselves feel ostracized or, like the culprit. So that's why we have to be super delicate, do research, do a proper research, get the right people involved when handling this. Because I do read in papers that, they think that they want to extend this to adults as well. I think, to me, I applaud this, because there's too many cyberbullying going on, too many doxing going on online. And these people who do this cyberbullying, doxing, are not just anyone. Even the professionals, they do this doxing and everything. They call out people, even on X, on LinkedIn and all this. So all this need to be addressed. These are kind of bullying as well.
In this case, how do we actually distinguish between normal interpersonal conflicts? Does a closeness of a relationship determines whether or not you are being bullied?
This one becomes very contentious. But the thing is that if you look at the definition, there's like a series of repeated forms of bullying or insults, or one prolonged, or it can be just one massive event, incident. So I think we have to look at this, whether arguing, quarreling, bantering is a form of bullying. That's why I said, when we define this, it's easy to do the definition, but to interpret the definition, you will have to listen to the circumstances.
Now, that was Dr. Haezreena highlighting to us how Malaysia is trying to move from reactive interventions. But of course, dealing with bullying has a lot of considerations to put into. Some key questions here remain. Whether or not, again, schools equipped in identifying what constitute as bullying, as well as whether or not the tribunal's framework can be actually fully protecting our children in these supposedly safe spaces. Now, we move from social vulnerability to financial vulnerability. Of course, we have Dr. Ida here. Dr. Ida, we understand that, in Malaysia, household strain is rising at an alarming rate. Apparently, nearly 5,000 personal bankruptcies were actually recorded in the first 9 months of this year alone. What does that tell you? Because among that particular figure, there's also a rising issue among our youth being in debt, and some not even have full 1 to 2 years of permanent working experience.
Yeah, this is alarming number. if you ask my opinion, actually I'm worried, to see this number in which there are many people who are going into bankruptcy, in which they are in debt. This kind of culture should not be persistent in our culture. It is not good. Any types of debts actually is not good. But before we go deeper, Amalina, let's talk about the definition of this debts. Okay, actually there are two kinds of situation. First, when someone are in debt and somebody else is trying to give loans, that is actually a good deed because we are helping people. Someone is in a difficult situation, don't have money, and someone else are actually giving loans so that this person can pay whatever, probably their food and so on. So it is a good deed. But that situation is without interest. Means if I give you loans for 100 ringgit, you are going to pay me for 100 ringgit.
Cap at that, yeah.
So in that situation, this person are actually doing good to another person.
But it doesn't work that way, right?
Yes, but the loans that we are talking about now is actually with interest, and that interest is high interest. It's not little interest. It can be 2 digits, can be 10, 15%, 20% or more. So although the term is still loans, but we need to understand that the situation is different. One is actually doing good to the others, and the other one is actually for their business. Because in this kind of situation that we are going to talk about, buy now, pay later, or any types of loans, means that I give you loans, I get more from that. Means it's my business. I can get rich because I give you loans. So that situation is different, and the concern that we are having now is actually when we have loan with the interest that we are talking about, because if I buy something at 100 ringgit, if I didn't pay on time, or probably I default the loan, then that thing 100 ringgit can be 150 ringgit. Right?
But even if we do agree with a standard, like fixed term of a fixed period of a loan payback, right, the interest is still there, right? Because it's over time, unless you immediately pay off in one lump sum.
Yeah.
So do you think it's actually something that we should be relooking into, how banks themselves or regulators themselves maybe lowering down certain interest fees, not even at the current rate, which we see is between 15 to 16. That's like considered like flat lah. If you get lower than that, that's considered okay, right? But that's what a lot of the general populace don't necessarily know. This concept of bunga.
Indeed. So I think the government is looking into that matter now. Moving, for example, the car loans, we are moving from the flat rate into the reducing balance, which is fairer, I think, to the one who are taking that loans, right? To the borrowers, more fairer. But of course, it's yet to be implemented. But as Amalina mentioned, it is still a loan, and we need to look into the amount of interest that we are talking about. Because in the case of buy now, pay later, or any personal or any loan, when we probably we miss the dates, we miss the date that we should pay the loan, and you have to pay two kind of payment. First is late payment, the late payment fees, late charges they call it, and the other one is the interest itself. So actually there are two components of extra payment that we need to give actually. So yeah, I think what Amalina mentioned, some people probably do not aware, but this loan is not like the loan without the interest as we discussed before. This is the more that you delay the payment, the more is the interest.
Yeah, no, because as I mentioned, what's concerning is that in this year alone, we saw that spike of young people actually being in debt because, they see fast money first. And probably in terms of their spending habits, they're not yet disciplined, right? So they take up that loan for whatever spending. Sometimes it's also to pay off student debts or any other things, just to get by. For instance, if you work in KL, right, and you come from the outskirts or you come from outside of the Greater Klang Valley even, the day-to-day expenses is very jarring. So you need assistance, you need financial aids, or what they will market it as, like financial aid, right? To help them put a start. But again, like I mentioned, when you have that much money at one go without having that sort of discipline, that's why you're in debt, and that's why we see this current problem that we're facing. So I want to again stress the question of, should regulators have to really look into ensuring that our young don't necessarily just, take up that risk immediately? I know that they're planning to do so in 2027, meaning before you take a personal loan even, there's a checklist of certain criteria that you have to fill up before you take up a loan. But on the other side, they will say that if you do that by a certain period, then people will take up loan more now. And then we will see a rising number of people in debt even before that is being implemented.
Yeah, as far as personal loan is concerned, of course there is a checking, before you get personal loan, whether you have constant income or not. But for buy now pay later, there is no checking at all. I mean, anybody can take, that kind of loan, so to speak. Coming back to what Amalina mentioned about discipline, it's very important. Actually at the end of the day, the call is on us as individuals, whether we want to discipline ourselves or not. But of course, government can play a role in terms of, because government is on the policy making, right? Try our best to create the society, to create the some sort of a culture among us. So sometimes when it comes to buying, there is something called impulsive buying. Sometimes it is because that there is a sale, buy one free one kind of thing. We don't need two. Actually, we just need one. So suddenly we buy.
Yeah, like right now we have this Black Friday thing, Singles Date thing, 11/11, 12/12. How is that?
Indeed, that's part of impulsive buying. So other than that, impulsive buying also includes for those who are actually, they are bored, they tend to buy.
They are bored.
They are bored, they tend to buy. And sometimes there are stress, they tend to buy more. So these are part of impulsive buying. And when this buy now pay later make easy for people to buy things without actually having any money, and we feel that we can get money in the future, that can also contribute, to the debts that we are going to have now.
But don't you think that these operators, whoever's offering the BNPL sort of mechanism or schemes here, right? If they do it like they overload it, they do it to an extent where everybody takes up BNPL, and eventually these repayment habits are not intact, don't you think the entire system will collapse itself? So I'm actually questioning as well, like, how is our BNPL mechanism or an ecosystem actually work? If you get everybody to buy now, pay later, and then people can't pay back, and then suddenly
they will get bankrupt too.
So it is a question that we have to ask, right?
Too. Although in terms of numbers, in terms of percentage, not much come from BNPL. Actually, most of them are personal loan and things like that. I would like to bring into a bigger picture. In fact, regulators or the government, in this case a central bank maybe, can look into the composition of loans given by the banks to the people. There should be less loans given as personal loans and more loans to the businesses actually, so that we can stimulate the economy. Of course, when we give a personal loan, they renovate the house, there is also income for construction sector, maybe something like that. But it is more important for the loans to be given to the industry, to the business, to the SME, for example, so that we can stimulate the economy more than giving loans to the as a personal loans.
So you're saying the take-up rate for businesses or entrepreneurs to take up, let's say, a capital funding for their own services or products is actually lesser than personal loans?
Personal loan is a big amount.
Okay.
Because there is a demand on that, right? And the interest is also high. So back to my principle is that any loans is not good. Any types of loans. So because when we are in debt, that is not a good situation. So for a country, we should not encourage, I would say, this kind of loan culture or borrowing culture as much as possible. So to me, don't allow such a thing in the future in which try to get our people on debts. It's not necessary though. We don't have to go to that path.
Understood.
Which is not good. Because in the future, other than buy now pay later, there can be other terms actually. There can be other modes. But in principle, it is still borrowing. It is still debt. So any type of debt, we try our best to reduce it as much as possible.
What's your take on having to take up loan for debt consolidation?
Again, it is still a debt. And we prolong sometimes debt consolidation. We prolong the period though. So what is freedom all about. For someone who didn't have any loans, any debts, that person actually has total freedom in their life. Financially, of course. The more loans or the more debts you have means you have less freedom. So let's not going into that way. So as far as this buy now pay later is concerned, of course the good thing actually to the seller, to the business person, because they would like to sell as much as possible their goods and services, right? So whatever happened to you, whether 2-3 years down the road you become bankrupt, it's not their issues anymore, as long as they sell their products. In the government, because government try their very best to look into both situations, all situations, whether you are a consumer, whether you are a businessman or a seller, try to get the best possible in terms of the policy.
Well, but the reality of it is today is that people sometimes they take up loan. Some, they don't just willy-nilly take it out because they are basically trapped in a stagnant sort of wage environment, right? And over the years, they have other responsibilities or maybe emergencies that they have to attend to, that they are, driven to take up loans to fill up the holes or gaps here. So, Doctor, in this context of managing cash flows, is there a formula that we can actually look into in having, say, let's say we do take up loan, but should we save some of it for reserves?
Yeah, we should, of course. Malina, we should have some reserve. Okay, the basic principle is this. If you don't have money, don't buy.
Okay.
Get the income first, then buy. Because if you didn't have the income, you buy, then it means it is debt. Okay, it is a borrowing. So that is first principle. Second principle, there are situations whereby when big ticket item, like we want to buy a house, that house is 500,000. How can we have a saving 500,000? So probably we have got no choice in that case. We are going to take loans. But for small items, try not to. Because it is the best way is that we get the money first and then buy. But Amalina, I have a situation. This is real situation about BNPL, buy now pay later. At that time, I would like to buy some goods. I think it's the shoes because there is a discount. So they tell me, it's a discount by what? 10%, 20%. Okay, I said, okay, I'll buy this from this shop because there is a discount. Apparently, when I add to cart and I try to pay, apparently I cannot get that discount unless I take the buy now pay later.
I see.
I said, there is a catch. Means, to me, logically, why you want to force me to get that loans and you don't want to give me the discount? I want to pay right up. The whole amount, total amount, right? But probably they would like to promote the buy now pay later. So then at that time, of course, it's my fault too. And I said, I want the discount. So I go for the buy now pay later, 3 months installment.
Yeah.
You know what happened after that? I forgot to pay on that date.
Oh, okay.
So then what happened? I've got interest. I said, oh my God, now all the discount that I got before, now back to square one because I need to pay the interest because I missed the date, I missed the deadline. So I tell myself, I say, right now I cannot be late or I cannot be forgotten in terms of paying at that particular time. So I need to put in my calendar and so on. So sometimes it's not that purposely I want to get that buy now pay later, but somehow they force me because I want that discount. So this kind of situation, I believe that the regulators can look into this matter,
Yeah. So BNPL as a form of sort of like a subtle marketing or driving behavior spendings, if it's too rigid as you laid it out, then it should really be looked into because I think consumers should be able to have the option to pay via buy now pay later or not, right? But the second option would be the ease of access lah. You want that item here first. For instance, let's say you need a vacuum to, I don't know, because it's the year end, family gathering or whatever. But then to buy something now, that whole lump sum is very, difficult because you got to spend for food and every other thing, right? And it's the year end. But then when you're able to spread the bill into certain, let's say, installments, then it helps with your cash flow. So it goes back to my question, like, how do you manage your cash flow? But that's the thing. If we don't pay on time, so when the interest is incurred, you're actually paying more.
Yes.
So we're pretty stuck here, right? So actually, is consumerism actually killing us?
Indeed. Consumerism is killing us.
Okay.
Killing us as individuals if we are not disciplined. But of course, as you mentioned, it can be a good thing because quite easy. But some people probably lack of a discipline in terms of their financial behavior. So I think in general, if you take the pros and cons of buy now pay later or any types of loans, in general, loan or debt is not good.
Understood.
So that is the principle we must have in mind. Any types of loan or debts actually is not good. If possible, we have to avoid it unless it is something like towards investment kind of thing.
Or medical emergencies or something like that, right?
In fact, for medical emergencies, we are in Malaysia. Our healthcare system is actually quite good. I'm talking about comparing with other countries, okay? We are quite good in terms of our public healthcare system. Of course, in terms of waiting 3 hours at the hospital is quite normal, but in terms of what they're giving us, their service are actually good. So if you are asking that, if I didn't have money, why should I go to the private hospital? I should go to the government hospital. Although I need to wait, for example, 3 hours, but still, the service in the government hospital is good. Unless I want to have a room like a hotel room. So again, it depends. To me, it's nothing wrong with spending as long as you have the money.
As long as it's within your means.
Yes.
And yes, specialists in private hospitals also come from government
Indeed.
hospitals as well. I mean, they share their panel, right, in that sense.
In fact, they are lecturers. Most of them are in the government hospitals.
Understood. Okay, coming back to how we manage our debt and, how we manage our cash flow, right? Earlier, we talked about, personal loans still being the highest in terms of the take-up within the Malaysian context, and then BNPL having this issue. But there's also another issue of, how we are already in this aging sort of population. And our senior citizen bankruptcy has rose 43%. That's nearly half of the population of that demographic. So is this actually a sign of a deeper retirement crisis rather than just spending habits?
To me, it's a spending habit more than the age. It's a spending habit. Not so much on whether they are actually retired, because the job is still around though. I mean, in Malaysia, we are at full employment. 3 to 4% unemployment in economics perspective is already full employment. So you can imagine many of the jobs that we have in Malaysia, we need foreign workers to do it. That shows how actually there are a lot of jobs. But the issue here, I mean, if you would like to have a high-paying job, yet easy job, but high-paying, that one we cannot get, But in general, we have a lot of job actually available. So retirement age to me, 60 now is a 60 retirement age. Of course, there is a discussion whether you should increase to 65. In developed countries, they increase to 63, some are 65. They have increased already, and I agree with you, we are towards an aging nation. Whether increasing retirement age is the solution, in my opinion, probably we cannot solve the issue of bankruptcy among the seniors by increase their retirement age though. I'm worried about the productivity, because once you are above 60, you are no more productive. Of course, we are not productive as compared to the younger one, right? And at that age, people are being paid handsomely. Because they are already climbed the career ladder. So we want to extend some more. So in the case that they are really productive, doesn't matter. But to me, if you didn't increase the retirement age, and if that person is still productive, we can always employ them as, on contract basis, or piecemeal, means if there is a job, so we just pay as for the job. I mean, rather than we take everybody on the 65, I'm worried that the negative impact will be more than the positive impact. What I mean by that is the salary is not matched with the productivity. Because if we want to increase productivity, the output must be matched with the salary. So imagine if you are more than 65, you're still healthy, that should be okay. But many, I would say, which is not healthy at that age, I'm talking about physically and also mentally. So how can we pay someone who are not productive productive yet hold a high position and high salary, I mean, I'm worried that it will be counterproductive.
I see. But there are instances where, like, the ones who have reached retirement age or about to reach retirement age, going back into the workforce because it is part of their mental health, because they feel like it's either like if they're alone at home or like, you know, their kids are already grown up and then they've maybe probably overseas and everything, the isolation from being with within a social setting, even if it's at work, is something that is more damaging to them. So that's why they go back into the workforce, but not looking at wages per se, but more of like the piecemeal concept that you just mentioned, or the contract sort of concept that you just mentioned, for as long as they're able to integrate within the civil society in that sense, so that they are not lost.
That should be the way.
Okay.
I believe that should be the way, rather than increase the retirement to 65, say, for everybody. I think the second option that you just mentioned is better to me, so that we can avoid this counterproductive kind of situation whereby they are paying at a higher salary, yet they are not productive, sick most of the time, for example. So I think it's counterproductive. I agree with you that we need to be keeping ourselves active physically and mentally, although after the retirement. But we can do many things. I saw some people, after their retirement, they do other works. For example, they do translation. They have good English and Bahasa Malaysia, right? They can do translation work. They can stay at home because it's a piecemeal work. So they can do translation. They can do something, I mean, if their language is good, right? So they can do translation. They can do something like a subtitle to the movie, things like that. So actually there are many jobs out there which is suitable for those who are after the retirement age, and they still keep active and they are being paid piecemeal. It's not for free, of course, because this their time, their effort, they need to be paid. But to me, not for everybody, for those who have the capacity and capability.
With that note, right, the question of whether or not our retirement sort of like safety nets are there, is it already foolproof for people who, let's say, they reach the age of 55, they can safely retire? Because right now, the question is that if you have enough in your own personal savings, then you can decide to retire. It's not like a question of yes, immediately, because, you know, unfortunately, it's still very personalized to the individual. Can we, to what extent are we able to push for the country to ensure that our aging population can, you know, go into their golden years without even thinking of like, oh, when I reach 50 and my income is still like this, I only have how many years to go, I still have to work, obviously. How can we do away with that? Like, in what context can we actually provide this safety net to our elderlies?
Oh, interesting. That's a difficult question, Amalina, because it's different from one person to the other.
Okay.
Some people say after retirement, I want to relax. Some people say, I still want to work, but not 8 to 5 like before. You know, I want to have it at my own time. So I think we need to give the opportunity to all kinds of people. So as much as in our country, we are giving opportunity for mothers. You know, for mothers, probably they don't want to work 8 to 5. They want to just come half day so that they can take care of the children, that kind of thing. Or why not we extend to another group, which is the retirement age group, because they still can contribute to the industry or to the people, but in different ways. So in the past, I think there are maybe Talent Corp or under the Ministry of Human Resources that they have these programs, right, for the ladies in which they can come to work for a part-time basis, for example. And this time around, why not extend another group, the retirement age group? They still can contribute. You just have to give them the opportunity.
Right.
So if you like to come, this is what we have. So whoever have the capability and you would like to join us, why not? Of course, they are being paid. It is not something free.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've spoken, I suppose, to the extent of like what we can of the retirement community here, right? Or those who are about to retire. But then having to also question about whether or not you get pensions versus you don't get pension, is that a factor as well to be able to live comfortably?
Of course it is. For those who have pension, at least they have a minimum income, in their hands. But for those who didn't have pension, but if they are on EPF, Employee Provident Fund, they can also have something sort of a pension actually, because they can withdraw monthly rather than withdraw one-off. So there is sort of a scheme available right now. But for those who didn't have EPF, so this kind of situation can be a little bit difficult because they are also not under EPF, right? So they depends on their own saving or probably the children. So this is quite a difficult situation for those who are in that particular category.
Those that are in this particular category, is it a big amount of percentage though?
I don't have the number, Amalina.
Okay.
But I've seen it. I've seen this group. Usually, if they have children, then the children will help out.
Understood. I mean, there are people like this within the society still, right, that probably are still dependent on the government's cash transfers or incentives. But again, like, it really extends across to, if they have offsprings, yes, then your sons or daughters will be able to help. But for those who don't necessarily have these outlets, that is where they fall back into taking up loans or whatever. But if you're later in your age, it's harder for you to take up bank loans, but maybe not hard for you to take BNPL.
Yes.
So on that, right, coming back to this, so the government, or at least Bank Negara Malaysia, is actually trying to enforce a mandatory financial education module that looks into how borrowers who are applying for personal loans over 100,000 ringgit must actually complete a short financial course and before you actually get a loan approval. And another effort is that they're going to put a ban on flat rate of like the rule of 78, if you're able to explain to me what this is, because apparently some of the methods are outdated and not necessarily apply to today's context, because when you talk about today's context, you have the market growth versus the policy lag, right? So the policy is still like 20, 30 years ago, but the behavior of the market has changed. The consideration has changed. So and we're talking about digital lending as well now. So in this particular context, there's a lot at stake here. But what we don't want to deny is we have a growing number of people in debt. This particular case, how can we ensure the pattern does not repeat itself again?
I just hope that in the future we are not going to allow such programs or such kind of business which leads to more debts. Don't allow, because these are all in the hands of the regulators, I believe. So as much as possible, try to avoid, because that is not good. That is a principle, very simple principle. But of course, there is some situation whereby for the business person, they want it because they feel that I can get a lot of money from this kind of business, right? From the consumer, they want it too, because this is easy for me. I want to buy something, I didn't have money, and I can buy installments. So, but what is the role of the government? The role of the government is to make sure that both parties, either they are businessmen or either they are consumers, and to shape the behavior of our people. Okay. I'm talking about the culture just now. That's the role of the government. What culture are we going to create for our people? So if we allow so much of this culture of debt, so that is how we go in the future.
So you're talking about practical financial management skills, debt management, budgeting, and self-restraints, I suppose, especially when it comes to impulsive buying here, right? Going back to the feasibility of ensuring that Malaysians don't necessarily fall into the debt trap. For instance, if let's say you're earning a certain wage, you know that you cannot purchase that yet. But it's a freedom of choice to some extent, right, Doctor? I want to understand, like, can operators or at least regulators help to facilitate better sort of like attainable or like consumerism sort of like behavior beyond loans? For instance, there's this issue of like hibah function, or at least consideration of a hibah function and a credit score improvement sort of module. Does this actually help people?
Probably it helps, but not totally, of course.
Because the concept of it is that already you're getting in debt from the beginning.
Yeah.
Is it?
The word hibah is something like hadiah. Yeah, it's a gift. So as long as it's a gift, should be no problem. But sometimes we intertwine with the debts or the loans. So Amalina, I just would like to retrospect maybe about this buy now pay later. So sometimes we ask ourselves whether we don't have this in the past. We do. I'm talking about 30 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, in which people buy things installment. For example, maybe they come to the kampung, to the village. They sell carpets, for example. They said, okay, please take the carpet. It's too expensive. Never mind. You can pay me 3 times. Okay. Sometimes they take jewelry. They take textile usually, but they can pay 3 times or 4 times. But that situation usually no interest. Said that after the month number 3, I said, I cannot pay. I'm so sorry. I cannot pay. I don't have money. Can I pay next month? They said, okay, I'll come again next month. You pay me, but without interest. So in that situation, it's like buy now pay later, but without heavy interest rate. Because they know each other. So in the past, the seller know the person who buy. Probably if they didn't pay all, they just take back the carpet maybe. All right. So things like so they know each other. But in the case of buy now pay later now, I think the big issue that the interest is high.
The issue on this particular discussion is actually having to navigate the interest that is being imposed on the the loans that we incur ourselves in at the moment, right?
Indeed.
Doctor, we have actually come to the end of our episode, but I do want to end with this particular question to you. In terms of having to ensure, our emotional spending is intact, right? Earlier I mentioned about the government having to introduce a financial literacy program. Do you think having to instill a program is enough, or do we actually need to go down on the ground, having to educate our students, the young, with Hari Koperasi in schools, that they encourage us to have that entrepreneurial spirit, but not necessarily on economics or savings, kan? The only saving sort of mechanism that worked was Mari Menabung campaign, if you remember back in the days. But nowadays dah tak ada benda tu. Nowadays we only rely on our e-wallets, and our e-wallets push, invest here, invest there. But sometimes it's just too much information for us to understand. It's not simple as the day back in the days when you actually go to the bank, you buka account. I still remember those days. My father would bring me, and you actually menabung, save like 50 cents a day, like that.
You got the tabung, the real tabung.
Yeah, the actual real tabung. Right?
Actually, now they have that tabung also. You go to any banks, e-banks, they have the tabung, but probably they just ignore that tabung.
But nowadays, it's accessibility is so easy. Even with ASB, right? You can just I have this much fund, or maybe I can take out. Okay, I can just request online. Before this, there's another layer of if you want to take out those funds, you have to actually go to the bank.
Make it difficult to spend. No, we make it easy to spend.
Yes,
that's a problem.
Exactly. Yes. So in that particular context, is introducing a financial literacy program enough, or do we need to actually go more? Do we need to actually impose a stricter law that parents, if the kid is under your guide, your supervision, you have to actually ensure that the finances are intact?
Awareness must be there, of course, continuous, but awareness may not solve everything. So to certain extent, probably law plays a role. Because sometimes when we want to shape behavior, we have this carrot and stick kind of things, right? Carrot means you give them something that they like. I mean, they do something good, okay, we reward. And the stick means if you are still doing that, then there will be a slap, something like that. Yeah, there's a stick, we call it. So it is still valid to me. So awareness, go on. Please not stop the awareness. But later, not everything can be solved with awareness. There are things also can be solved with rules and regulation. Yeah. But of course, that is the last choice that we can do.
Yeah. Dr. Ida, thank you so much for your time today. I do appreciate how you've explored the topic of how we manage our finances, how we look at debt, and how we look at our spending habits. But the bigger question here also is how can we ensure the individuals who have this access to monetary gains or at least funds, right, that are not necessarily yours yet, actually decide whether or not to take or not take. Whether to be in debt or not be in debt.
Let's choose not to be in debt unless it is very, very necessary.
Okay. And with that, we do want to advise everyone to mind your spendings during the year end. Although you're able to, freely choose however you want to celebrate your holidays. But of course, what you don't want is by the new year, suddenly you have all the bills coming in and you're not able to, catch up with the amount or the overdues, right? Yep. I'd like to thank again our guest on set today, Associate Professor Dr. Ida Muhammad Yasin. Thank you so much for being on Beyond the Headlines, Dr.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
And to our audience, thank you so much for staying true to us. Now, if you like this particular episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell if you haven't already. You'll not only get NSC Beyond the Headlines update, other NSC Online's news reports will be delivered to you. Now, of course, follow us on our social media. We are on everywhere. We are on Facebook, Instagram, X, Threads, as well as TikTok. I'm Amalina Kamal, and we'll see you next week.